All right. Kicking it off first, let's check out these stories. Police Minister Bheki said that law enforcement would not rest until the murders of the two police officers who were killed in Boksburg last week had been solved. 45-year-old Vusumzi Bacha and 29-year-old Khotso Malahlela were ambushed while responding to a crime scene in Boksburg last Thursday. 3 suspects are still at large. On Wednesday, the minister joined the family and friends of the officers at the memorial service at the Freeway Bible Church in Boksburg. He has called on police to spare no resources to find the cop killers. Get these criminals alive or dead, but it would be nice to see them. I wish an opportunity to ask them what happened. There are too many criminals around, said Bheki. The Phala saga has remained prominent on social media for several months. The Center for Analytics and Behavioral Change analyzed the content and patterns, which revealed that powerful factional agendas are active online. Explosive allegations by Arthur Fraser that President Cyril Ramaphosa had covered up a multi-million rand robbery at his Phala farm in 2020 have sparked and sustained an online conversation that shows no sign of abating. While Ramaphosa clearly has to answer to a slew of allegations, the Center for Analytics and Behavioral Change analysis on the online conversation, which revealed inauthentic behavior and a coordinated effort to narrative manipulate. The key accounts driving the narrative were the first encountered during the CABC's analysis of the RET online network in March 2021 and the July 2021 unrest in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. It appears the network aims to discredit, stoke negative sentiment, and manufacture online dissent against Ramaphosa. It also appears to dominate the online conversation to crowd out organic conversations. The Feather Awards have officially dropped their list of nominations for the 2022 awards show, but fans are less than impressed with one of the candidates, the University of Cape Town's Vice-Chancellor, Professor Mamokgethi Phakeng. According to Tweeps, the ceremony, which celebrates the individuals who support and empower the lesbian, gay community, the LGBTQI plus community, is guilty of celebrating the woman whom many have hailed as transphobic. Professor Phakeng is nominated in the category of Drama Queen of the Year award, this after continuously making headlines over her alleged misconduct as UCT's VC, her questionable tweets, and her personal life. Last week, the Feather Awards released their list of nominations in various categories, but like every year, one of the most popular categories is Drama Queen of the Year. These are personalities we read about every Sunday over breakfast. Their lives revolve around a lot of dramatic behavior or situation. The awards said that the category is on everyone's lips. And the 3 personalities, actor SK Khoza, reality TV star Tato Monte, and UCT Vice-Chancellor Professor Phakeng definitely fit the bill. On social media, however, South Africans were unconvinced the latter deserved to be celebrated in the LGBTQ award ceremony given her history. Last year, Professor Phakeng was publicly criticized over a lecture described as harmful and hurtful to the LGBTQ community. In September, she came under fire for hosting a social media seminar titled, "What Does the Science Say About LGBTQA+?" Matabe particularly caused an outrage with her comments on intersex babies, which was slammed by the Gender Diversity Coalition. Professor Phakeng was also criticized for her indirect contribution. Weeks earlier, she also hosted her Vice-Chancellor's open lecture just weeks featuring controversial Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Adichie was accused of transphobia when she was asked on Channel 4 interview whether transgender women are any less of the real women. She infamously responded, "My feeling is trans women are trans women." Feeling the heat and after the self-reflection, Professor Phakeng apologized for her actions. After a week of being a man down, a series of health setbacks amid his cancer diagnosis, including a collapsed lung, Mark Pilgrim has revealed a glimmer of hope, a new drug from the Netherlands he is set to begin taking. The Hot 102.7 presenter was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer earlier this year. He's currently undergoing intensive treatment. Over the past few weeks, Mark Pilgrim has been left bedridden after suffering a crashed immune system after months of intensive chemotherapy. He has also had vast amounts of liquid drained from his collapsed lung, and just last week he revealed on social media that a bladder infection saw his temperature spike drastically. He said of his lungs, we all have about 300 mils of fluid in our cavity. Mine are filled to about 5.5 liters. They drained about 2 liters out a few days ago and go straight away. Stay straight away. The top of the right lung started working again. They're going to do 2 liters at a time for a week or so, but I'm feeling much better now. Thanks to the treatment, Mark Pilgrim also revealed the rumors of his spine and leg had disappeared and that one of his lungs had shrunk significantly. Mark is currently undergoing radiation and chemotherapy and takes a combination of non-prescription meds like medicinal mushrooms and vitamins. He also added, I'm also on immunotherapy, and from next week, I'll be on a drug from the Netherlands, which is targeted therapy. Let's hope something gets better for him. We really wish Mark Pilgrim the best. 27 after 9 a.m. A female homeowner was seriously injured after she shot dead one of the suspects who had invaded her home in Waller Crescent in Morningside, Durban. The incident happened on Wednesday night, the 19th of October, around 8 p.m. Now, according to emergency services, the female homeowner suffered a gunshot wound to the back and was found in critical condition. Spokesperson Kyle van Reenen said the advanced life support intervention was needed to stabilize her before she was taken by ambulance to a nearby hospital. A male approximately 30 years of age was found to have sustained fatal injuries and was declared dead on arrival by the paramedics. Reports from the scene allege that a number of armed suspects forced entry into the home, holding up the family, and a shooting ensued with the suspect suffering fatal gunshots. SAPS was reportedly in attendance and will be conducting the necessary investigation. The incident comes after another suspect was shot dead by a farmer after he allegedly found inside a farmhouse and was ransacked in Hendrina, Mpumalanga earlier this month. So, let's get further into it. A Home Affairs official has confirmed before the Carltonville Magistrates Court that one of the alleged illegal mining kingpins obtained his South African identity documents fraudulently and through misrepresentation. The 6 accused are facing a range of charges ranging from fraud and money laundering, as well as the contravention of the Precious Metals Act, were in court on Wednesday. 5 of the men have abandoned bail. The state told the court that some of the men had given false names at their arrest. Dumisa Moyo is the only accused who is pushing ahead with bail. He told the court that he lost his passport in 2021 and had no family or business outside of South Africa. Moyo also claimed to have been born in Welkom in the Free State, where he attended primary school and high school. But the state has called Home Affairs Immigration Officer Mothusi Letsogo, who disputed this. I've got a letter from the hospital denying that Dr. Dumisa that Mr. Dumisa Eric Moyo was delivered at that hospital. Letsogo also visited the Marema Pofu Primary School and the Lepola Secondary School in Welkom, schools that Moyo claims to have attended, but both said no record of him and sent a letter confirming this. In its bail opposition, Letsogo told the court that most of the information provided by Moyo, including the hospital where he says he was born and the schools he claims to have attended, could not be corroborated and is in dispute. But his lawyer, Advocate Jörg Heisemann, hit back posing questions about the letter from the school. Letsogo says it is for the writers of those letters to answer this. He says that a sign that his identity document was obtained fraudulently through corrupt Home Affairs officials. The European Commission denounced Hungary's poster campaign comparing EU sanctions on Russia to bombs as inappropriate. The Hungarian government has been promoting a national consultation on the sanctions with a poster campaign featuring pictures of a bomb as sanctions. It is inappropriate to show pictures of bombs or missiles in relation to the sanctions, thinking that the aim of the sanctions is precisely to stop bombs from falling on Ukraine. The EU has so far imposed 8 rounds of sanctions on Russia over the war in the Ukraine, targeting imports of Russian coal, oil, steel, and wood, in addition to ban on exporting certain high-tech products to Russia in a bid to derail its ability to fund the war. Former Joburg Mayor Mpho Phalatse said that she was confident that she would be reinstated to her position. Late last month, Phalatse was removed as mayor through a motion of no confidence in council. It is a decision she was challenging in the High Court on Wednesday. Phalatse said that the current Joburg Mayor, Dada Morero, did not assume the position in a legitimate manner. She said that talks were ongoing to strengthen the multi-party relations in Johannesburg should there be another motion of no confidence against her if she's reinstated as the mayor. Definitely there will be another motion and we will fight in council. We will fight it legally. Whatever the outcome, it must be a legal outcome and it must be legitimate. Whoever the mayor is, our resident stakeholders and likes, they must make sure that they're dealing with a legitimate mayor in the city of Johannesburg. This, she said unequivocally. The Hawks have nabbed a suspected kingpin behind a syndicate targeting Transnet pipelines. He was arrested during a multi-pronged Hawks operation. The 35-year-old faces charges including damage to essential property and theft. Yay. The Bapedi Nation is looking forward to a peaceful future after a High Court ruling that set aside the appointment of the Queen Mother as acting king following months of factional squabbles. Yesterday, the Limpopo High Court in Polokwane ruled against the installation of Queen Mother Manyako Tulare in favor of her stepson Marwoumbe Tulare after months of conflict over the throne. Manyako has been at the helm of the throne since her son King Victor Tulare III's death in January 2021, but the rule was challenged by the factions in the royal family, which supported Marwoumbe just 2 months after she was crowned. Spokesperson for the royal family in Sekhukhune Makoko said that they were relieved that the courts had settled the dispute and hoped that this would be the end of the factional squabbles. This means that Marwoumbe will rule over the entire Bapedi Nation and all the Mahoshi under its parameters, Makoko said. He said the Royal Council would also call a briefing for the media soon to announce what would happen next. 27 minutes now before 10 a.m. So, Satao said we had no choice in ending the strike. Satao has called off his 2-week strike in the port and rail sector. This after majority union UNTU signed a wage deal with Transnet. Satao says it had no choice and as the agreement was binding. It's been a catastrophic 2 weeks for South Africa's port and rail sector, but finally workers will return to work today. After initially refusing to accept the Transnet wage deal, trade union Satao announced on Wednesday night that it had called off its strike. UNTU, the larger of the two unions, were the first to accept a 3-year deal running from April 2022 to the end of March 2025. It will see the workers getting a 6% increase in 1 year and a 5% increase in year 2 and a 6% increase in year 3. An uncompromising Satao branded this the traitorous move, but has in the last 24 hours urged their members to leave the picket line. Lester Kivit speaks to Anele Kit, Satao Deputy Secretary General, about the wage deal. The story of Miss Clara Phillips would be familiar to anyone with knowledge of the quasi-feudal relationships between apartheid-era farm owners and the generations of farm workers who lived and worked on these farms. You probably have never heard of Mrs. Clara Phillips and her son Adam Phillips. They are either powerful or they're neither powerful nor influential. Have never met the Guptas and are unlikely to ever feature in a press release of the Jacob Zuma Foundation. And when Lindiwe Sisulu or fugitive from justice Paul Ngobeni decide to pen another broadside against the South African judiciary on the Constitutional Court, Mrs. Phillips and her son, or the Constitutional Court case they recently lost, are unlikely to be mentioned. This is despite the fact that the ruling favors are powerful parties, property rights owners, and in the view fails to accord sufficient weight to the interests of the dignity of Mrs. Phillips and her son. In closely contested cases, South African constitutional court more often than not, sides with the more valuable party, at least in cases where the legal rule makes it this possible, against those who wield social and economic power, which makes this case somewhat of an anomaly. Previous owners of the farm had verbally promised her that she had a life right to continue living in the house. She was unaware that to secure that life right against potential future owners, registration in the deeds office was required. Her right to remain in the house would nevertheless have been protected by the provisions of the Extension of Security of Tenure Act, but for the fact that over the years, the farm was subdivided and gradually brought within the urban edge of Somerset West. Now, the ESTA protection only applies to farmland, which means Mrs. Phillips could no longer rely on it. The efforts to evict Mrs. Phillips and her son started towards the end of 2008 after Willem Grobler bought the property on which Mrs. Phillips and her son lived. Excuse me. Mr. Grobler, who is a businessman with a law degree and a chief executive officer of a technology company, bought the property at a low price as an investment. When Mr. Grobler bought the property, he knew that the house on the property was occupied, but seemed to have assumed that he would be able to get Mrs. Phillips and her son to move out of the property one way or another. The matter took many legal twists and turns before it ended up in the Constitutional Court. Before the Apex Court, the crisp legal question was whether the Supreme Court of Appeal was correct to hold that it was not just and equitable to order Mrs. Phillips to evict. In Port Elizabeth versus various occupiers, the Constitutional Court has, in PIE, expressly required the court to infuse elements of grace and compassion into the formal structures of the law. So all of this happens, and unfortunately, Mrs. Phillips and her son did not win that case. What does that mean? Exactly what you think. Sad, really, but these are the things that we live with. Finally, and further afield, in the continent of Africa, Nairobi is referred to as a green city in the sun because of lush parks surrounding the East African capital. Rome, a Kenyan-Swedish company, now wants that epithet also to refer to the city's environmentally friendly mobility. It unveiled Wednesday an electric bus in a city where polluting exhaust fumes, contributing to a thick smog. It's the first electric mass transit bus in Kenya that we designed since last year and co-manufactured it with a global partner, Dennis Wakaba exclaimed. If only one charging station exists in the metamorphosis of nearly 5 million, the team Rome was not deterred. They wanted to encourage green commuting in a city where smog-belching minivans are a more familiar sight. The 77-seater bus has a top speed of 70 kilometers per hour and a battery pack allowing it to travel 360 kilometers before requiring a 2-hour charge. That brings us to the end of our moments in current affairs. Thank you.